Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode number 89, and no, 87. 87 today, that's right. I knew it was an odd number. Maggie and I are back again, and we wanted to go over some of this. We've been discussing War of the Rohirrim, getting ready for this next Tolkien adaptation, and there are a couple, well, not exactly trailers.
New pieces.
Yeah, new pieces. Some little promo videos that we
I would call them teasers.
Teasers. All right. That we wanted to look at. And they seem to be sort of building in some kind of sequence. So we'll sort of see where they go with this, but anyway, that's what we wanted to.
They're about 30 seconds long, these little teasers, and so far they're called King and Helm.
Yes.
Yeah.
King and Helm. Really interesting, by the way. Let's start there.
Let's start with
the subject matter.
I thought that was an interesting place to start, because I wouldn't have thought from everything else we've discussed that is the central focus. Mm-hmm. And here we are on King and Helm as opposed to Hera, daughter, adventure,
Yes. Right. Exactly. Now, the idea, so when we look at this King video, we will, we'll see what it emphasizes, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a little bit broad. Like, it's not just about like the king. It's, seems to me to be focused a little bit more broadly, like what it means to be king and all that kind of thing. So about leadership and ruling and that kind of thing. There's clearly some of it that's going to be relevant to Hera and Hera's quest in the movie. And yet, yeah, as you say, like, it seems that they're going a roundabout way to set up the central action and the main, the primary character of the show. And I have to admit, I'm a little plus minus on the approach, actually. It seems very indirect. Like, I feel like in two different dimensions, they're trying to appeal to certain expectations, but the thing that they're delivering on the back end does not fit any of those, either like of the expectations that they're setting up. Like, if it may possibly be that getting people pumped about like Rohirrim kings is going to get people excited to watch this movie, but that's not going to be, as far as we can tell, the focus of the actual movie. Like, I'm not sure that it's going to deliver that, right?
Right.
Just as they keep trying to get people pumped up about, connection with the live action film, and it's not going to satisfy, like, this film is not going to satisfy that. It's going to give them something different. And we might as well just have this discussion before we even begin, because it'll prevent me ranting while it's playing.
So both of these clips start with footage from
Yes.
Peter Jackson trilogy,
Yes.
which is important to this forthcoming rant.
Yes. And just basically, I carry on loathing that approach. Like, I think the connection, so like the text, notice the text. So this is the King one that I have up right now, the beginning of which I have up right now. Starting with Peter Jackson invites you. Like, a message which says either explicitly or even implicitly, Peter and Jackson invite you to return to Middle-earth, right? That's a fine message. Like, I have no objection to that. Like, anchoring it in the experience that people have. The problem that I have is with the actual footage, because it sets up a false expectation. Like, it's when you're leading in with imagery that is not the thing that you are teasing. I mean, you're spending, even if you spend 5 seconds on this, you're spending a huge percentage of your, you're spending 1/6 of your entire teaser on what this movie is not, and not just on a different movie than what you're actually teasing.
Yeah.
But on something in a completely different medium. And if you're afraid that anime isn't going to bring people in, do you think they're going to stay for it once they've been brought in under false pretenses? Like, it seems to me really puzzling to me.
Yeah, I feel like it's setting up some disappointment. It's setting up expectations that are not going to be realized.
Yes.
But I can also see that if somebody just watched an anime trailer, they would immediately turn the channel. They would immediately turn it off. They would immediately hit the back button because some people just disregard the entire genre. It's the same as like the Harry Potter coming out with different book covers. Like there were the adult book covers and the kid book covers because
Sure.
adults didn't want to be caught reading kids' books.
With a
Like
little cartoony picture in the front. Yeah.
right, like it's a marketing ploy that I think it's been proven works. So I can totally see where they're coming from. Leading with this will make me take a second and maybe watch it. We're looking at the trio we know, looking at Rohan. I'm immediately brought back to nostalgia, immediately brought back to adventure, my heroes, all this beautiful stuff. And you're engaging me with this realm that had such a rich, beautifully built world in Peter Jackson's original trilogy. And now you're going to show me something from that storyline. I get it. I'm intrigued. But I also totally see what you're saying of like, but you're setting up an expectation we're never going to realize.
No.
So I don't feel as emotive about it, which is rare because I feel like we're usually the other direction where you're more level and I'm more emotive. So
Yeah.
that's nice to turn the table. I can see why they're doing this. I think this makes sense, but I think they're probably only going to have more viewers, which is what they're after. But in terms of feedback, I don't think it's going to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because again, even like if you're achieving that increased viewership for the teaser, I mean, on false pretenses, how is that going to lead to a net yield? Like, I
don't think it's for them. I think it's for the film. I mean, if you're going to get me to watch the teaser by showing me something I'm familiar with, I'll sit and watch this 30 seconds and then maybe I commit to more.
maybe.
But if you just showed me an anime trailer, I wouldn't watch the film. I don't know. Like, I think maybe
I
they're
don't know. I
hoping
mean,
that
it sort of
goal.
seems to me like if you're going to do the thing, you have to do the thing, right? Like you've made the decision to make an anime movie. Like, why hide that, right? Like if you're ashamed of that, then you shouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, and it's the footage that comes right after it too, because if you let this play
Yeah.
a second, then you get that beautiful shot. That's probably all we would have needed. But no, instead you get Dead Theoden, Aragorn raising a sword, matched with Hera raising the sword. Like, I get what you're doing. Aragorn raising a sword, Hera raising a sword.
Yeah. So
You
if we
didn't
do,
need
let's.
that. You could have just shown us Rohan and
Yeah.
have it fade into Rohan.
Okay, like a landscape scene, perhaps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take us from footage from 2003 into animation from 2024. Kind of cool.
But again, like to me, the names, even the fonts used, like the title fonts for the Lord of the Rings films, are so iconic that you could convey that without the
Yeah.
misleading visuals. I think. Anyway, so let's
Fair.
play it.
And the title is The Lord of the Rings. Like, we get it. This is a Lord of the Rings film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're doing the connection. I really disbelieve that they're doing themselves any good with anime resistant people by faking them out first. Before they reveal that it is in fact anime.
Yeah.
Again,
We have faced down death, famine, war to hold these lands together.
You do not command the loyalty you think you do.
Brothers of Rohan, arise!
We have to get our people out.
Don't give up.
You're stronger than I knew. Rohan still stands!
The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. Only in theaters, December 13th.
okay. My favorite part of that trailer is that it contained no elephants. So I hate to be salty about this too. That's still my biggest. The elephants are still my biggest concern about the movie.
Okay.
Like, I've talked about this. I'm concerned, and to clarify again, I'm not concerned on a, like, that's not in Tolkien and therefore they can't change it. I'm just, my number one concern about this film is I don't want to be told the same story again. And everything they release suggests to me that it's simply like, show me that there's something other than a nostalgia appeal in this movie.
Fair.
Show me there's something else. Show me that what is interesting about this story. Tell a good story, independent of the other. Again, it's not to mean it has to be separate. You can make connections. You can show the continuity. It's all good. But show me that you're telling a story that you think can stand on its own feet.
Yeah, and I don't doubt they're going to have a wonderful story. I mean, this writers team, this, everything that they've put into it, like, I bet it's going to be a beautiful story, or at least give us something really interesting and meaty to talk about, totally separate from the original trilogy. But they're setting it up to not do that yet. I don't know anything about Hera. I don't know anything about this actual conflict because we haven't met the characters in any of these trailers in a formal, official way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, looking at, Maggie, what you were talking about here, if I scrub through... How long is it before we
face down death, famine, war?
Okay. So the transition, it's only 3 seconds. It's only 10% of their whole teaser that they use on the old live action footage. So it's not as bad as it could be. The juxtaposition of Hera and Aragorn. See, again, I hate to feel like I'm nitpicking, right? But again, the effect of that, Aragorn, there isn't anybody in this movie, it seems to me, who ought to be paralleled to Aragorn.
Except in terms of heroic.
I guess. Yeah. But like, it's, I don't know. Like I said, perhaps it's too nitpicky. But her relationship with this teaser is called King, right?
Yeah.
And yes, it's true that Aragorn is a king, but he's not the king of Rohan.
Yeah.
If what you're trying to capture in 30 seconds is the relationship between, like what it means to be a leader of Rohan, what it means to be in the position of king, and the responsibility that gives you, and how we see Helm struggling. I mean, the narrative of it, right? I mean, if we just let me mute it for a second. If we just go through from here, right? Little quick version with audio commentary. We see Hera is the first person from the film that we see. So she is in the hero spot paralleled with Aragorn, right?
Yeah.
Now we get the conflict between Helm and Freyka there at the beginning. Helm challenging Freyka's authority and the connection that Helm has with the people, right? You don't, inspire the loyalty that you think, right? And then we were getting like what looked like a bunch of disgruntled, Rohirrim and Dunlendings, and then we got fights between the two of them. Her riding by herself, battle happening, her meeting with the eagle, and then being embraced by a beat-up Helm at the end. So it looks like it's talking, like just from the visuals, it looks like we're getting this, the older king, Helm, losing his grip on what it means to be king, and the kingdom falling apart and falling into civil war, and her going out independently with very different lighting. We only saw him for like a second, but she's in a very different place, right? I mean, that was thinking of all the things that you have taught me to look at there, Maggie. I'm looking at, like, going back for a second. From here on, like all darkness, right? Darkness and firelight, darkness and firelight, smoke in the background, dark clouds in the background, darkness, fire. Oh, look at that. Oh, beautiful dawn, sunlight shining all over the place, right?
Right to left movement.
Right to left movement. She's going counter to everything else, and she's the only one well lit by the sun. So this is a departure, right? Like she's going out of that, and now though like she's still having problems, right? This is her. She's involved in darkness. Right? Notice though, hey, she was looking back over her shoulder, right to left, even in that little shot, right? Anyway, like darkness and fire, more fire. Oh, bright sunlight again. Bright sunlight and blue skies. The only blue sky we see in the whole thing is the blue sky behind her and the eagle, which we don't know what this is about. Like we don't have any plot. It's a 30-second teaser, but we again, this seems to be a climactic moment, right? And if we've gotten anything of her quest trajectory, it has been she's leaving behind. The kingdom is falling apart, but she's gone forth in the contrary direction, right? Working against the forces that are bringing the kingdom to ruin, and it seems to culminate in this dramatic moment with the meeting with the eagle, which then is affirmed by this moment when beat up Helm, without his armor now, in the snow, is embracing her and saying, "You're stronger than I knew," right? So this is like the passing of the torch thing,
Resolution,
right?
yeah.
Combined with the father-daughter like tender moment, right? So we've got the familial feels, but also the like political thing, right? And then now, oops. Elephants in the background here. See, just when I thought that there weren't elephants in this trailer, I found them.
So close.
But it's fine. Anyway, so here's Wolf coming in at the head of improbable elephants, and which shows us that like she's not escaped the problems, right? Like she still has to deal with problems, and we've got still problems. But here's Helm still now in the darkness, though he's on the other side now, looking back like she was, right? But anyway, we're now like, there's going to be battle and he's doing it, and we don't know where she's going to come in because we don't see her again after the hug moment, right? Okay. Sorry. That was my incoherent jumble on the story that we're seeing. Stuff that jumps out at you from that?
Oof, quite a few bits. I mean, I think the biggest thing is her separation. So that scene that you've already pointed out of just how different that was to the rest of it. And that's kind of what I can take of Hera from this clip, because what I'm trying to do is really figure out who she is and what her role in this.
What is this story? Yeah.
Yeah, if she's a protagonist, what am I hanging my hat on? I'm not sure, because all we've gotten so far is like she looks trapped, she goes for independence, she comes home to save the world, right? So there's some kind of circle like that happening there, but we haven't actually been told that. We're just kind of inferring that from the visual cues. But yeah, I mean, this one shot just having it be so different, I guess that's enough to set her apart. It is. It was so easy to find when you're scrubbing through, but that doesn't still tell me really anything. I also don't know anything about the conflict. Like, unless I had talked through some of this with you, like, I still don't understand why there's an issue, what we're upset about. You know, there's not enough detail here to really engage me to go see this film, except my love of Lord of the Rings. Like, I'm gonna go because I love Lord of the Rings and this anime looks pretty, but I don't know anything about what's going on with these characters yet, and that concerns me.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't assume, right? It's not safe to assume that they're assuming that we all know, right? I mean, Tolkien readers who have read the appendices will know what conflict we're talking about here. Though, you know, they might be confused by the elephants, but whatever, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's so we know, but that, surely they're not just assuming that even all Tolkien fans have like read Appendix A diligently and will immediately be like, oh yes, the conflict, you know, the Civil War, the end of the first line of the Kings, and you know, Siege of the Hornburg, like, you know, yes, it's hard, but of course I like to try to take my knowledge out of it, right? I mean, like, it's hard because like in this early moment here, like, I know what's going on here. At least I think I know what's going on here because I've read the book, right? And I'm pretty sure I understand that this is the conflict between Helm and Freyka. which is where the story that we get of this in Appendix A begins. But yeah, I agree with what Edith said. Edith Aldora says all the big Peter Jackson tie-ins feel a bit like we don't think this film can stand on its own.
And that was my concern. Like, I mean, we're here talking about the marketing angle. Like, we know this is an adaptation. We will talk about adaptation technique, but right now, marketing is what we have to work off of. We understand this is a separate piece. This is not the story that we're going to be viewing. It's a marketing technique, but it is affecting our ability to look at it as an adaptation.
Yes.
So the thing that I kind of am itching for, if this is the track they're going to take, is let's dive into the anime side of it. Show me a behind the scenes. Show me a like creation of why did we go anime, and give me a voice bit of like Peter Jackson or Philippa saying, "Oh, we were so inspired by this one paragraph." Like, let us lock in to Tolkien and text. But your voice will tie us to the original trilogy, you know?
Right.
Like, see what I'm saying? Like, it's still giving it the same gravitas
Right.
that they think putting the clip in does.
Right.
But it would give me more of the actual film to engage me on. Because even just scrubbing back through this 30 seconds, I haven't seen anything. I mean, if you want me to do some visual analysis, I can do that. But, like, of what? I'm not really sure what it's for yet.
Yeah. I agree.
I think it's beautiful, though. I feel like that was really negative. I really do think it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Like, I think there's neat inferences happening with angles. I think there's some neat things happening with light. I like the mix of like classical hand drawn alongside the computer animation. But I would love to hear Peter Jackson's voice or that crew tell us more about this. So they're bringing that into this piece, and it starts to stand on its own.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is really interesting because the one thing that we get, let me do another pass at this. This time I'm just going to pay attention to the text, like the message we're literally being given, right?
History becomes legend. I think
On a
that's
groundbreaking Peter Jackson invites you on a groundbreaking return to Middle Earth. Groundbreaking because it's anime. Okay, sure, great. On the date, history becomes legend. Okay. History becomes legend. The Lord of the Rings, the War of the Rohirrim. So what does that mean? History becomes legend.
King.
And it's
called King. And it opens with Theoden and the... Oh, no, that's the next clip. Sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't open with Theoden and the horn.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah, of all of them, by the way, the most interesting thing, if we do go back to the actual Peter Jackson clips that we get approach to Edoras, which makes sense. So we see Edoras, focus on Edoras. That one, Aragorn in the Battle of Helm's Deep, transitioning again. I already talked about that. I'm not a huge fan, but this one is the curious one.
Yeah.
Soldiers of Rohan carrying dead Theodred on the bier to his funeral. So little, very brief clip, 1 second clip from the funeral of Theodred is an unexpected, turn for the things that they choose here at the beginning. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. History becomes legend. That conveys that this is going to be like, it puts us in the mindset of the time frame, right? Like, at the very least, it conveys prequel, right? Like, this is, the Lord of the Rings. This takes place before that. Okay. So history conveys that.
Yeah.
Becomes legend. I vaguely understand that to mean it's going to be awesome.
Right. Like, you're going to see how cool this was and why it's now talked about in reverent tones.
Right. Yeah. I'm because of course it's tied to the date, right? The date was one of the other things we got, right? Groundbreaking return to Middle-earth on December 13th. History becomes legend. So it's like, okay, so this film is going to be so awesome that it's going to take this moment of history and turn it into legend. Okay. It's already a legend, but that's all right. Like, it's fine. I'm not going to nitpick there, but
What's the dialogue from the prologue? Myth became history. I mean, Kate Blanchett has that.
Right.
I'm like, I wonder if that's what they're trying to hearken to, because that's what I was reminded of like,
Yeah,
it
that's
just
interesting.
feels like trodden territory when you say like history becomes myth, myth becomes legend, legend becomes actual, like whatever, you know.
Right. JJ was just recalling the same thing. JJ, can you find the quote for us? I want to make sure we don't switch the
Butcher
terms
it.
around,
Yeah.
because I can never quote that line correctly, because I find the terms
There we
as
go.
they use them kind of fungible.
History became legend, legend became myth. So
History
that's
became
actually
legend.
in there. Some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend, legend became myth, and for 2,500 years the ring passed out of all knowledge.
But in the context of the prologue, that's a bad thing when history
is not.
becomes legend.
Right.
Like, that's the first stage of the process of forgetting about it.
Forgetting. History becomes legend. When it should have been something like legend becomes reality.
Yes, exactly. Like, legend comes, like, you will be immersed in legend.
Yeah.
Like, legend, you'll be a part of the legend or whatever. Yeah,
Yes.
history. Yes. Okay, so it's a quotation. It's a misquotation. It's like, it suggests that the people who made the teaser don't understand the film.
Hey, like, I see what you tried to do there. It's gonna be familiar and ring a bell for those of us that clock that. But if you go any deeper, it doesn't really work anymore.
I had forgotten that connection, and now I'm glad that I had.
No,
It didn't
sorry.
help. It does the opposite of help. Yeah.
And there's no other words until the very end, right?
On the screen? Yeah. No, the titles are the next. The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim are the next after
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I feel I agree. If anything, they're making legend into history. Again, like, by the rationale of that line in the prologue, they're working it backwards, right? They are bringing to mind things which which should not be forgotten, essentially, right? I mean, that's... Oy. Okay, well...
Okay. So we have a few issues with marketing. We have a few issues with your script. We have no idea what you're going to try to show us. And yet we're still intrigued because it does look beautiful. It's an interesting story. We want to hear what these proven storytellers have to show us. But the way that we're getting the information is just a little confusing. That's my sum up of this point.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's Adola, I agree. I too see the relevance of the death of Theodred. It is true. Theodred's death means the end of the second line of the kings of Rohan, which means that Éomer becomes the heir and eventually becomes the king and the head of the third line, because he's not the son, he's the sister son, he's the nephew of the king, and so begins the third line of kings. And of course, that also is going to happen in this film, when Helm and his sons are going to die, and his sister son is going to become king, Freyalaf, and is going to start the second line of the kings. Yes, that's true. And so the death, it's not just about like Rohirric funeral, spoiler, people are going to die in this film, but it is true that that parallel in the succession that's totally accurate. That is a ludicrously deep cut to expect like more than 1% of viewers to parse that. 1% would be ambitious. Not to mention that when you do parse it, what do you get? Well, trivia, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even an impactful like deep cut once you see it, right? Yeah. So I mean, yes, it's true. Like again, there's no, I see that, but it is not an impactful parallel in telling us the story necessarily. And I would add in another way, there are going to be several things that are going to be, they have several challenges, storytelling challenges that they have to overcome. One of the challenges is for the story visual and like for the script and the screenplay and the visual storytelling both have to be compelling enough to overcome the uneasiness or uncertainty about anime for some people. Like that's a thing. I agree. That's a thing. And they need to overcome that. In order for this film to succeed as they would want it to succeed, it can't just succeed with the subset of Tolkien fans who are also anime fans, or vice versa, right? Like where those two Venn diagrams overlap of anime fans and Tolkien fans. Like if that group in the very middle is the only people who like this film, it will not be a success, right? So they have to move outside that into presumably at least the rest of Tolkien fandom, with whom they have an established relationship because of the Peter Jackson films, right? And as we talked about, they're banking on. But as I say, one challenge that their story has to overcome is overcoming those obstacles. But there are others, right? Think about this parallel that they're establishing here. The parallel they're establishing between, they're inviting us here. So let's say we follow let's imagine that we're in that category of people that they're trying to appeal to. That is Tolkien fans who are not anime fans, right? And we're super astute Tolkien fans who also pay really careful attention to this and immediately track, not only, like in the 1 second we not only track that this is Theodred's funeral, but we realize the implications for like the dynastic, development of the throne of Rohan. Okay, that parallel. When Theodred dies, what happens? Why is it okay? It's okay because Éomer is there, right? Éomer in the movie, as in the book, Éomer is Theoden's right-hand dude, and Éomer is the one who is there to take over as leader of the Rohirrim as soon as Theoden dies, right? Mm-hmm. It is Éomer, like that story, that succession story, is the Éomer story, right? In War of the Rohirrim, whose story is it? Freyolof's story, is it? Is Freyolof going to be our main character? As the dynasty crumbles and Helm and his sons die, but fortunately Freyolof is there. Freyolof will be the next king. Just like, no, where's Hera in all this, right? She's our main character. So was she in the Éomer place, except she's not going to be king? And again, that's fine, but that's another obstacle to overcome. They're not actually playing out the parallel.
And with the same thing with the second shot, Aragorn raising the sword and then Hera raising the sword.
Yes.
Not the same thing.
So Hera's Aragorn? Visiting dignitary, helping out at the battle?
But if you shelve all of the deeper things that there, it's basically saying heir has passed, person stepping into place. Those aren't the right people. Those aren't the right roles. Just ignore that part.
Right. Exactly. It's going to somehow work out.
Person arriving. Yeah.
Yeah. And the handoff, as we saw, like the whole, like the hug scene, right? Which looked like it was some kind of transition. Helm looking genuinely elderly in that shot, as well as beat up and unarmed. It looked like a Helm at least saying goodbye to Hera. And under the circumstances, it kind of looked like, again, a passing off, especially since the title of this trailer is King, right? So again, if I knew nothing and I'm watching this very attentively, okay, I don't have to know nothing because they're assuming I know the Peter Jackson films, obviously. So assuming I know nothing other than the Peter Jackson films, and I get the Theodred thing, and I'm like, oh, Theodred, death of the heir, who's going to take over? Éomer. Okay, great. Well, look, Hera. Boom. Okay, now I'm expecting Hera's going to be the next king of Rohan. Totally. Right? If I'm tracking with that, that's what this is telling me. But I'm pretty sure that's not what we're going to see.
And I have to point out what Phil mentioned, because I can't remember if you and I were talking about this at Rings and Realms or if we've talked about this in Other Minds and Hands before, but Miranda Otto was originally supposed to provide the frame of this story. I assume that's still true because I haven't heard anything counter to that, but I am real surprised we haven't seen any of that frame already introduced into this. Because if you want to tie it to the original trilogy, you've hired the actress to do it, you give us a female lead. I mean, if I were producing this, it'd be like, well, no brainer. Let's bring Miranda Otto into the trailer, and she says, let me tell you a story of our people. And then it's her telling the story, like the actress, and then it cuts to the animation. Yeah. That makes total sense to me. It's like in Harry Potter when they do the three Hallows, the Deathly Hallows, and flashback, and it doesn't matter that it's animated. We're all in the story.
Right.
So, take us from that to story, and I'm in.
If that had been the teaser, even I would have been hitting the hype emoji about. That's a great. That would be a great way to present it, and it's still clearly the plan. By the way, it's in the notes here. They mention it. We get some story here. But did they not mention it here? Did they only mention the other one? Miranda Otto. I mean, I thought she was in the notes. Maybe she's in the notes of the other one. The Helm one. Maybe that one was the one I was looking at. Anyway, I thought I saw it. Maybe I saw it. Maybe it was an article I was reading or something that I'm thinking of. But anyway, I saw a reference to it.
I'll look in the other one while you talk.
Yeah. It mentions her. Yes, there it is. Miranda Otto, who delivered an unforgettable, award-winning performance in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, reprises her role as Eowyn, Shieldmaid of Rohan, who serves as the tale's narrator. There it is. Is it in the other one too? Are they identical?
Yeah.
Did I just miss it? Yes, it is. Okay, it's in both of them. Okay, so yeah, there it is. Reprising her role reprising her role, except not actually reprising her role completely. But anyway, yeah, I'm puzzled. I'm puzzled by this. Now, as for Gregory asks a question. I know that it's a question a lot of people ask. Like, are they thinking this deep about it? Are they just going, look, shiny soldiers of Rohan, let's put them in? First of all, are they thinking carefully? Yes, they're thinking carefully. Like, their job is to, if you, so anyway, yes, like making trailers is an art. Is there a template? Yeah, there are totally templates. Like just like there are templates for writing TV episodes, right?
Yeah.
And how like the pacing of different, plot points hit. There are lots of templates that people use. Sometimes people vary from them more and sometimes less. Sometimes people will depart from them entirely, either to good or disastrous results. But there are templates out there for trailers, for sure. And yet the choices that they make are really impactful, and they know they're impactful. Like a good trailer, a good teaser always has a narrative of its own.
Right.
Now, as we've said, and Maggie, as you were just saying recently, a few minutes ago, that story is not the film, right? So, and there can be times when you can have a really, really good trailer and the film does not follow in the footsteps of the trailer. Like, it ends up being kind of misleading. Like, that was not the story I thought we were getting based on the trailer.
Happens all the time, and I get so mad about it. It's like, well, then why did you even cut that? But again, different teams, not proved, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. However, it doesn't change the fact that, like, the people who are cutting the trailer, absolutely are thinking about the story that they're telling. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Let's look at the other one. So I haven't even watched the other one yet. So once again, we start with live action. This time, instead of a scenic establishing shot, we get an action. We leap instantly in the second one into the gates being rammed with the battering ram.
The horn of Helm Hammerhand shall sound in the deep.
War is upon us.
Attack!
This is not a battle we can win.
To whom are you pledged?
Death!
When the songs of this day are sung, we will fan!
The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, rated PG-13, only in theaters December 13th.
Okay, this one is called Helm.
I don't want to go through it again and count the number of times somebody's flying through the air.
Okay, I'm going to mute it. So that, okay, here we go. Let's see. So we're battles, Theoden, Gimli, the horn. Okay, all right. Helm. We're a lot of the same shots.
Charge.
Falling, swooping,
explode,
leaping,
fall,
riding,
fly, crash down, ride,
and
charge,
then
crash down,
serious anime jump up,
charge down.
Charge
Okay,
down.
so we have 3 flying overheads. We have 4 charges. So this is an action-packed.
Yes.
This is one that's going to bring the bros in, right?
Starting with the action-packed intro, right?
Yeah.
We get action sequence. We get the establishing shot of the action sequence. We get the memories of the end of this climactic battle, Battle of Helm's Deep in the film. I have to say, I wish they'd stuck on it for one more second, but the cut to the anime with the sound of the horn, like you get Gimli blowing the horn, and then like this look from Helm as the horn blows. This is seriously cool. Like, I love this shot. I love this shot. Yeah, now, David Perto asks the very relevant question, do bros watch anime? Well, see, David, there's the challenge, right? The challenge is they're trying to get the bros to watch anime. That is their challenge, should they choose to accept it, which they have by making an anime film, right?
And I'm positive I've brought this one up before, but the first trailer that came out for Twilight was the big battle between the vampires and the fire and the ripping of limbs. Like, no, that was not what Twilight was about. It was super cheesy teenage romance. But they already knew they had the teenage girls coming. They were going after the boyfriend.
Right.
They were going after the boyfriends that were going to be dragged there.
Right. This is why you should agree to go with your girlfriend, because like it won't be completely boring, because like there's bro stuff in it too.
So it's very much pitched at that. We already know the Tolkien anime fans are going to come because look how
they
cool
don't have to market to that center of the Venn diagram. Like the center of the Venn diagram, they have the announcement. Yeah. Those people have been like marking off days on the calendar ever since this was announced, right? I mean, goodness, even my kids who are big anime fans and know about Tolkien because of me have been really curious and are like have been looking forward to watching this ever since it was announced. But yes, it's the general Tolkien audience that they need to bring in. Now, Edith was asking about are ridiculous acrobatics an anime thing? Yes. In my experience, anime in general has takes a low view of gravity.
Yes, that's a great way to phrase it. Yes,
it's just not a high priority. So, like, now that was an only slightly implausible leap that she just made. Like, by anime standards, pretty chill. That was a little bit more. The final, this one, that's straight up anime. Like, that is extremely anime. Yeah. And again, this is part of like. I am not an expert on anime by any means. Like, my anime exposure has been relatively limited, primarily determined by the fact that my kids like anime and have watched some with me. But I really liked I think it was Kelly Fancher was talking about it this way. Kelly teaches courses on anime in our space program, and he was talking about how like you need to understand like the grammar of anime. Like you've got to understand its grammar and syntax, like how it is conveying meaning. It's if you look at it merely as like, if you approach it with the question, with the expectation of pure realism, right? Like it's going to depict on screen things exactly like that, you're going to be disappointed. That's not the language it speaks. The idea that Helm could leap, what do we think? He's 50 feet up in the air here, right? Like,
Right.
Okay, look, no, he's not going to leap 50 feet up in the air. He's not going to, I mean, look, he looks like he's looking down on Hera on the ground, like as if he's on the 5th floor of a, you know, of a building or something, right? And this is supposed to be his leap, with his fist crashing down, presumably on that troll thing. Anyway, like, but you see, anime is not the grammar of anime. It does not use that kind of realism as like the basic purpose. It's not how it communicates, right?
Extremely exaggerated, and
this is designed to tell us certain things about this moment, about this character, about this situation, right? But it's not. But if you're just stuck on realism, if you're going to be saying that would not work at all, that isn't how they go, then you're not gonna. Then you're not getting it. You're not picking up what they're putting down, right? This is all about. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I just put a link to a primer that I was familiar with in the Twitch chat. I don't know if you want to share it to YouTube, but it's not exactly appropriate to this, but it will just show you a lot of the meaning in anime is just such a different language from what we speak elsewhere. So there's loads of different little symbols and movements that convey different things in anime. And I was talking to another one of our colleagues, Robert Steed at Signum.
Yes, who teaches a lot of anime. Yeah.
Teaches a lot of anime, and he was talking about kabuki theater and how movement and, you know, just different ways of phrasing a body can convey meaning in anime. So there's so many different ways that we haven't looked at or talked about yet that this story could be told. But you can't assume that your audience is going to know this, because we are giving you an anime that is supposed to be super broad appeal and not let you get lost in the weeds. So if we start with just 5 stories up, coming down, then maybe that's a good place for us to start to understand that the movements are just real different here.
Yeah. No, I think it's, and I would say, by the way, it's not like there's some like hidden secret that you have to know. It is really interesting to like be taught about some of these trends. It makes it easier up front. But like, we could just look at this shot, just taking this shot on its own, and you can see what's being conveyed here, right? I mean, so like we've got 3 figures here. Look at Hera. And so he's looking down at her. She's in his foreground, right? We know who this is. This is Helm. This is her dad. And this is Helm Hammerhand, and we see his fist, right? So one of the largest items, I said one of, no, the largest item in this shot is his beefy arm and his fist, right? That's the most prominent thing that we get on the right-hand side, opposed to, and look at the troll is down there. He's got his fists. And his fists, notice they're also disproportionately outsized from his body. Like his right fist here is, I think, a little bit larger than his head, right? So his fists are outsized too. So we're seeing power against power, the connection, which of course Tolkien, like those very astute Tolkien fans will also remember, Helm Hammerhand is himself associated with trolls. Like he is taken for a troll. Like they think he is a troll. Like his enemies think he is a troll. So the fact that they're bringing in what I'm guessing to be a troll, and having him like fight a troll, like that's actually a kind of a fun play on that moment in the story. But anyway, back to the visual thing here. We see these smaller figures, the troll standing over Hera. We see her sitting in a almost not completely helpless stance. She's not completely supine. She's not unconscious or something, right? She's up on her hands and she's got her feet a little bit under her, but she's on her butt, right? She could potentially move. But she but she's not like battle ready. She's not part of this. She is the one he's fighting for, right? And he's leaping over her to get at the troll. He is the enormous descent that is coming, right? Emphasizes the power of his punch.
Yep.
Like this is conveys. It's like the exaggeration of the height of his jump and the exaggeration of the force of his punch is a way to like capture this. It's almost like when a medieval historian tells you that the enemy, like when the enemy charged, there was 1 million of them. Like there were 400,000 of the enemy charged our 2,000 men, right? Are those numbers historically accurate? Probably not, but it conveys something important. Like they're communicating something to you when they give you those numbers. You shouldn't just roll your eyes, right? They are trying to be true to the experience of that event, not to the historical details. Just as this is not trying to be true to like realism and how high a person can actually jump or how hard a person would actually hit. They are trying to convey the fight. We're not going to get a 15-round fight between Helm and the troll, right? We're going to get that conflict encapsulated in brief, and the brief is going to be bam, that, right? And I kind of love the downward shot too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the movement in the shot too. We know gravity is going to pull him down, but having the snow there as well gives such a visceral feeling to the pace that this is going, and some of those snowflakes being blurry, some being sharp. It just shows how much action is going on, and he's cutting through all of that as the one focal point.
Yeah.
And it felt very anime to me too, with all the speed lines and things like that. It's just showing this kind of otherworldly movement that we don't question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with Hruadbarat as well. An extreme jump like this vibes with the idea that heroes of old, like Helm, were so much larger and more powerful than heroes of today. And that's one way in which legends are larger than history. Yes. Yes. We are seeing here, like, being dramatized for us, and look how personal, like, we are put into the position of his target here. Like, we're being invited to imagine Helm Hammerhand, the legendary figure Helm Hammerhand, coming down with his hand right at our face, right? Even that approach from the distance that we just saw, right, is almost in its way. Again, he's coming at us like as from a long distance away, right? Anyway, it's cool. It's fun. Like, yeah. I like how it speaks. I'm ready to be receptive and to learn new things, but your expectations are important, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is just another reason why I think building the expectations surrounding, even in this trailer, juxtaposing action scenes like this with action scenes like this doesn't help, because this action does not speak that language.
Right.
Certainly not in the same way.
Not this language. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway,
I still feel like for first pass, I'm okay with it, because I see what they're trying to do. It's only when you dig deeper that it's a real problem. So if they're banking on people not digging deeper, they'll be okay for getting us into the theater. But you're asking an audience that potentially likes Lord of the Rings and anime to not dig deeper?
Right.
Like, that's kind of what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. She's standing when he jumps. Does his jump up knock her over? I wonder.
Maybe. Yeah.
We see him departing the ground here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm interested to see. So this just dropped, right?
Yeah, like an hour ago.
Helm. This would drop today. The King one's been out for a while, since October 29th. It's been out several weeks. This one is brand new. I'm really interested to see where their sequence is going. I agree. I'm disappointed we haven't seen or heard, rather, any Miranda Otto yet. But I assume we're going to transition towards Hera as well. Again, this is obviously going to be one of the other potentially controversial elements of the film. There is going to be a demographic of the viewers of this film who are going to be resistant to the female protagonist, to the addition of a female protagonist into this story. I don't love how I don't want to say downplaying it, but they're being really shy about introducing it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm coming in. Somebody slammed a door out front, and obviously the dog had to defend the household. So that was me pulling him in. I'm coming in the middle of that sentence, but agreed.
Yeah. Well, no, so it makes me nervous. I think it seems to me a really poor idea, and a parallel poor idea to the live action thing. That, you've made the choice to make an anime film. Own it. Help people. Understand that you need to help people transition into it, but don't bait and switch them, right? Similarly, you've chosen to have a female protagonist be the center of this story. Own it. Don't try to hide it, right? Yes. Don't try to downplay it in the trailers to hope that you can get them in the theaters before they realize that the protagonist is going to be a woman, in fact, all the way through. Yeah. Neither of these trailers really seems to foreground either one of those things in that way.
It's a lot of mixed signals instead, which is just a little confusing, and I'll still go see it, but I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to see this. Here's what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, and Guy Brenna, I agree. I don't know if you pronounce gay or guy at the beginning, but it says, I think that demographic will always be around and will always be resistant to the female protagonist. Totally agree. But again, you've got to know, you confront that reality when you choose, you chose to have a female protagonist. You went into that with your eyes open, right? This is, again, it's not to say that that's a bad choice, but that a challenge that is inevitably going to be in front of you is you need to make sure that that's going to work. And that you have a plan for, showing how that's going to work.
And if you don't want to shout it from the mountaintops for any sort of cautious reason because you're worried about the bros not coming to a female protagonist film, there's other ways to engage us in that character without it being alienating. Thinking about Hunger Games trailers and things like that. Right. It was very much about the world that we were in and the battle that had to be fought. Mm-hmm. And then we meet Katniss and understand that it's going to be her story. But we're already brought in before that kind of happens. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be about Hera the hero. There's other ways to package that isn't diminishing the female role, but it's also not saying this is the only reason you're going to come see this.
Yeah. It's not that I think it's a bad idea to have a teaser that emphasizes Helm. Helm is the most famous character in the whole story. Helm is the legendary figure from this story. And the one whose names all Tolkien fans, even just Peter Jackson fans, know because he's the one after whom Helm's Deep is named. And so, and book fans are going to remember the Rohirrim in the Battle of Helm's Deep chanting, Helm, Helm, Helm rides forth to war. What does that mean? Why are they shouting that? So, yeah, sure. This picks up on all that. And Helm is an important character, but yeah, it's the story of Helm. The story of Helm is a tragedy. Mm. And that's another thing that I feel a little bait and switchy about, potentially. Because from everything I've seen, I'm forced to the conclusion that they are indeed going to tell Helm's story as a tragedy. His story, personally, is going to be a tragedy. But this teaser about Helm ends with what looks like triumph, Right? I mean, it ends with that shot of him descending and his fist towards our faces.
Yeah.
And that too seems like a big
Doesn't end in
switch.
tragedy. Yeah.
If you're telling me like, hey, you've heard of like the hero Helm Hammerhand, well, you're going to get lots of like, come see this film and see Helm being awesome all over the place. Doesn't tell me like this is going to be a tragedy and you're going to see Helm systematically screwing everything up and almost losing his kingdom, which is what the story in the book is. Like Helm, and we get hints of that, like the words of Freyka and everything. Again, like I've seen enough things from them to conclude that is indeed the story that we're going to hear, but that isn't the story that we're being prepared for in this teaser. So again, it feels to me like we're getting seriously misled by these teasers, I think.
And I don't know what they're serving. Like, they're fun. I enjoy watching it. Great. Let's see a little bit of where we're going.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the whole directive is. And you imagine there was a lot of planning going into it of here's our strategy, here's what the point is, here's the message of this one. And even the titles, Helm and King. I'm still not really sure what I'm supposed to be getting from these.
Yeah. Can I point out, I want to point out one interesting, I'll go to the other one. One adaptation point, which is really interesting to me. One adaptation decision that I see them making frequently in what we've shown so far is so Hera is a shield maiden, and although the trailers have not made this obvious, as we're discussing, the way in which Hera and Éowyn are connected, right? In like with the shield maiden thing, right? Éowyn providing the frame, Éowyn, the retired shield maiden, providing the frame for the story of Hera, the earlier era shield maiden. Okay, like that's cool. I'm ready for that. Like that works for me. But there's an interesting contrast that I see them making repeatedly. And that is part of the point of Éowyn's, not the point of, a major element of Éowyn's story. She acts as a shield maiden covertly. That is, she disguises herself as a man, is mistaken for a man actively until the climactic moment when they deliver the line, which I always, the "I am no man" line. I get annoyed by lines from the movie that are really famous, despite the fact that the original line in Tolkien is way cooler. Anyway, whatever.
Fair.
That's just a gripe. But anyway, that moment, right? So she like reveals and like she becomes the female shield maiden openly, only in that moment when she confronts the Witch King, right? But she's not like being a woman who is nevertheless a shield maiden isn't a thing for Éowyn until she makes it a thing at the very end. The adaptation choice they make from the beginning, she always, like Hera always looks like her costume, right? Says female from the beginning. Like she is this first shot that we get, which the juxtaposition with Aragorn in some way makes it stronger. Viggo Mortensen is all like in armor and grungy and looking, well, I mean, Viggo Mortensen never truly looks nasty, but like this is not him at his most picturesque, right? Yeah. As by contrast, she's in like, look at the like beautiful like diaphanous veil and the little crown, the beautiful dress that she's wearing, right? With the shield and the sword, right? At the same time. So she like, and in the same thing when they do her, jump, is it, no, it's in the next one we get the jumping. All right. Cause it's in the jumping trailer that we get her jumping. Yeah, here it is. Here, yeah. So it's the same shot. She's just finished drawing the sword, and now we see what happens next. And this is we can see the way that she's dressed here is, I think, the same. This is the same sequence. Oh yeah, it's the A-frame from the tapestry, right? So this is the A-frame that they had on fire in the tapestry, and she's in that dress with the leggings and boots and armed boots underneath and everything, right? Yeah. So that, anyway, point, she's wearing a dress, like she's still wearing a dress while she's in battle here. That is to say that it's not just the Éowyn situation repeated. The Éowyn situation was, I'm going to disguise myself as a male warrior to fit in and hoodwink people so they'll let me onto the battlefield. Because if she had just dressed like this, they wouldn't have let her onto the battlefield, right?
Right.
She only did that by disguising herself. Hera, not disguising herself, right? She is a shield, an outward shield maiden, both shield and maiden from the beginning, right? And I think that's interesting. I think it's a really interesting adaptation choice. Again, it's like the film itself does not at all seem to be shy about the fact that it has a female protagonist, even if the teasers seem a little bit more shy about it. Yes, Phil, I agree. It is almost like she is clad in shimmering samite here. She certainly glows in this scene, for sure. And although I agree, the dress here is torn to pieces. Yeah, we see this is not just like, I am like clean and elegant as if straight from the court, right? But also,
right.
And yet I am her whole outfit here screams both halves of the word shield maiden in ways that Éowyn doesn't do again until the very, very end. Do
we know what happens to the shield maidens between Hera and Éowyn? Is there any kind of history?
No. All we have is Tolkien. The most we get, frustratingly, is actually from Tolkien's drafts. Tolkien contemplated having like a bunch of shield maidens show up at the muster of Rohan, to have that be like a thing that, it's like an established thing that there's a subset of the women of Rohan who act as shield maidens. And Éowyn was just going to be one of them. He cut that. But as I've repeated many times, one of Christopher Tolkien's rules, one of the things Christopher Tolkien says in his commentary on all of Tolkien's, again, in the history of Middle-earth stuff, is always to be careful. Like, you can never conclude, just because Tolkien cut something from one of his published books doesn't mean that he was ditching that idea. Sometimes it just means he decided, like, the story works better without that bit.
It didn't fit there right now.
Right. Yeah. But that doesn't mean he's rejected the idea completely and said that it's not true. Sometimes sometimes that is what's happening, but not all the time. You can't assume that that's what's happening just because he cut it from the story.
I'm laughing because I had a whole separate document to my PhD thesis that said useful stuff I'll use later.
Right. Yeah.
It's just what you do.
No,
right?
that's exactly it. I always used to joke, and in the History of Middle-earth series that I've done in Mythgard Academy, I always talk about that Tolkien had a drawer. Like he cut these things from his books and he kept them in he had this drawer that he kept them all in, and that he would sometimes just like dip in and he'd pull it back. Sometimes he'd pull out like entire lines or passages of text and put it somewhere else after he cut it from one place, but he didn't lose it. Like he kept it in the drawer and used it later. Yeah, he saved it. Yeah, exactly. And then
it's like the brain fart drawer.
Well,
like,
and there's even stuff from like his earliest ideas in the history of Middle-earth that you're sure he moved on from, like the idea that elves are reincarnated in their descendants. Like dead elves come back in the bodies of like their great-grandchildren or something. Like that was an idea that Tolkien had way back in the beginning in the Book of Lost Tales days, and he decided he took it out, and it's kind of weird, right? Like just imagine it, right? Like you have a baby, and then you hold up the baby, and you're like, hey, It's
Yay,
Grandpa.
great-grandma, right.
Right, like that's weird. Like there's a lot of weirdness to that, right? So anyway, so he cuts that, but then he comes back to it. He comes back to it like 50 years later. He comes like, actually, yeah, that whole elf reincarnation thing. That, like maybe that's a thing. So like you never know. You never know what he's actually talking about. But anyway, yes. And Gregory, you're right. In Jackson's film, the audience is never deceived about the fact that it's Éowyn, unlike in the book. That is a really interesting difference in the approach that they take in the book. Though in both cases, that she can only be a shield maiden clandestinely still ends up being true in both the book and the film. Anyway, I wanted to highlight that. I kind of alluded to this a little bit before, but the way that they're presenting her in these trailers, it struck me even more that she's the femininity of Hera is something that is being made more prominent. She is embodying the role of shield maiden, which kind of makes sense because she becomes retroactively the archetype upon which Éowyn herself is built, which works really well with Éowyn telling the frames, being the frame narrator of the story. Like, let me tell you the story of the original shield maiden, right? And that's cool. I think that's fun. That for me, this is why I am myself. There are people who roll their eyes about the another female protagonist thing. I am not one of them. I'm interested in the female, and this is why I'm interested in it, because to me that fits really interestingly into what we have. I am keen to see the story of the original shield maiden as a shield maiden, and I think that that's fun. But
now I just wish they would tell us that more clearly already,
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
cool.
I mean, I know we still have a couple weeks still. I mean, the premiere in London is like 2 weeks away now, 2.5, 3, it's early December. And then this is a couple weeks after that. So we still have a month of potential content to come out. And I would expect probably another international trailer, which as we compared them before, that one was much deeper, much more interesting. But how they didn't lead with the Miranda Otto frame is now becoming a bit preposterous to me.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, I'm like,
Me too.
But that would have been great.
Me too. It really...
And it would have worked on the marketing and the story side. So if they're saving it,
Yeah.
that seems a risk.
Yeah. Agreed. Yes. Well, there was one other, so we weren't going to play this all the way through. There's the music video that they've released, which is a gorgeous video and a really
Song.
a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song with the footnote that it makes me nervous in the same way that the rest of it has all made me nervous. In that the lyrics of the song are all about Rohan coming to the rescue. And I'm like, what, of Gondor? That's it? We're still defining, yeah, that's a lot of the song sounds like it's talking about the Battle of Pelennor Field. And I'm like, what, why are we, can we not talk about the Battle? Let's not talk about the Battle of Pelennor Field. Let's talk about the War of the Rohirrim instead. In which, Gondor is not going to play a part.
Right.
But anyway, it's fine. Yes, Edith, this releases in less than a month. December 13th. We're at the 18th of November as we're talking here. So we're less than a month away from the release. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Sometimes some people are like, why are they not spreading this stuff around more? Why are they not promoting this more? It's hard because in my world, I'm seeing it all the time because I'm paying attention to Tolkien stuff and lots of people are talking about it. But yeah.
But even this we were talking about, I shared these clips with Corey, yesterday, and we were like, how do these videos only have 160,000 views? Why are the numbers so low? And the comments, 550 comments. That's real low for something like this. So I'm not sure if it's just we're not playing the algorithm, we're not worried about that, we're just putting out this piece.
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but
That
Warner
thought crossed my mind.
Brothers has almost exactly 1,000 times as many subscribers as Rings and Realms does.
Yeah.
But we get more comments on our videos than this.
Yeah.
And meaty comments.
Meaty comments.
Not just little bitty comments. But yeah, this King trailer dropped 3 weeks ago, and it's only gotten 153,000 views from their 11.9 million subscribers. I don't understand. How does that work?
Yeah. That's funny. I made the mistake of reading a comment. The very first comment is, okay, why isn't Warner Brothers promoting this? And there's 76 replies to that one comment, but most of it's shill stuff about, they're going to flop. It's going to flop. It's being made as a money loss movie. I see people talk about that all the time, a money loss movie. I don't think Peter Jackson with a Tolkien property would ever risk that option. So I don't think it's purposely supposed to lose money. This one.
Let me say that Warner Brothers choosing to make a film designed to lose money in partnership with Peter Jackson and in using the Tolkien IP would not be a great way for Warner Brothers to pave the way to moving forward with the Tolkien IP.
Right. And like with the entire IP that they have and plans that they have going forward.
That would not be a great, and again, there's no reason to believe that. I mean, even we have heard Warner Brothers people talk about what the Tolkien IP means to them. And, that's, I see no reason to doubt that.
No.
But anyway, yeah. So
we shall see. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting because I want to see what they come out with. And then I would love, before we see it, to do kind of a reconnaissance of like, here's the information we have. And then afterwards be like, what was that?
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. It's been a long time since we've had a theatrical film release.
Yeah.
It's been well, since the end of the Hobbit movies, really. So it'll be a fun moment. It'll be a fun moment to watch them in the theaters and talk about it together. Obviously, we'll have some conversation immediately afterwards and stuff. But yeah, no, I totally agree, David. Warner Brothers does not want this to flop. It's not only the beginning of like the first of this next generation of Tolkien movies, but it's the first Tolkien anime of this. I know Rankin Bass. I get it. Like, again, and to old people are like, people would never accept an animated Tolkien film. Old people like us are like, really? You think? Like, y'all spoiled youngsters, like, what about, our generation who never thought we would see a live action Lord of the Rings film, anyway, whatever. It's weird, but, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that it'll be interesting to see. I think they clearly want to pave the way for all of the Tolkien films they want to do. I bet you that they're hoping to do a whole series of anime films. We know they're going to do live action also. The Hunt for Gollum is a live action film, so it's not like they're going to investing completely in the anime side, but I think that they want to. So JJ, it is a good question. Will it have Rankin Bass quality songs, though? One can hope. The song that we received is good. The Rankin Bass songs are awesome, with the one extreme exception. But anyway, yeah. Sorry. Inside jokes. People know the song that I hate from the Rankin Bass Hobbit film. The main theme song, unfortunately. The rest of the songs are really good. The main theme song is dreadful, in my personal opinion. It's a terrible piece of adaptation.
That's a conversation for another day. We haven't done Rankin Bass, have we? That would be fun.
We did a glimpse at it when we were looking at
Yeah.
the openings. We looked at the opening
Yeah.
of the Rankin Bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all that we were talking about. But yeah.
Maybe do a bit on music. Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, then we couldn't play any examples on this though, because it would all be taken down.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to play long examples there. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. I think we should be around next week, so we'll look forward to being back next week. And we'll see as we get ever closer to the theatrical release. I think it's going to be a very interesting adaptation, but yeah, these trailers are tough.
There's
going
something to
in
talk
some ways.
about.
There's something to talk about.
There's something to talk about.
I wish they didn't make me so cranky, but but there's something to talk about. All right. Thanks everybody
All right,
very much
take
for
care.
joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye now.
See ya.